The radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this October 9th. October 9th. Hope everybody's having a fantastic week, getting ready for that weekend that I guess starts tomorrow night. All right, Alex. Alex stepped in with a $50 sticker. Thank you, Alex. Really, really appreciate that. All right, today we're going to go over just housekeeping. I've canceled my trip, so I'm not leaving tomorrow. So there will be shows. There will be a show tomorrow. There will be shows over the weekend. So yeah, no travel, no video, no travel, no video. There's the video. Anyway, we'll be back on schedule tomorrow with a news show. Let's jump in with the news. And I guess the big item in the news right now is the agreement between Israel and Hamas for the release of the hostages and the withdrawal, at least a partial withdrawal of Israel from parts of the Gaza Strip. So this was an agreement that was, it's the phase one of the 20-point proposal that Trump pushed Netanyahu to accept and then rallied all these Arab nations to rally behind. It seems like a huge amount of pressure was put on Hamas by the Qataris, the Egyptians, the Turks, to accept these deals. They all have something that they want from Trump, and Trump basically made the support of this deal a condition for receiving whatever it is that they want from him. We can, if you want, we can go over each country and what actually they want from Trump, or what Trump has actually promised them. Anyway, this is a phase one. We don't know, and it hasn't been negotiated, anything about the phase two. The phase one involves the Israeli government approving the plan, which it did about an hour ago. So the plan has been now approved by the Israeli government. That means that tomorrow morning, first thing, you will see Israel retreat from current lines to lines that are being agreed upon. It will still maintain control over just over 50% of the Gaza Strip, including strategic locations like the Philadelphia corridor. The Philadelphia corridor, that is the border with Egypt, will remain under Israeli control, which has always been something Israel has insisted in negotiations. Hamas has always turned that down. But other strategic locations will also stay under Israeli control. 72 hours after that retreat to those lines by the Israeli forces is complete, Hamas will release the 20 live hostages and as many of the bodies of the 28 that they have and can locate by that point, and they will continue releasing the bodies after that. At the same time, Israel will release 250 terrorist murderers from prison. Supposedly, they will be released but immediately flown out of the country. That is, they will not go to Gaza or to the West Bank. They will be deported. Learning something from Trump, I guess. They'll be deported outside of Israel. And then another 1,700 Gazans that have been detained during this war. So 1,700, probably mostly Hamas members that have been in Israeli detention since the beginning of the war. I think that Israel has insisted that none of the 1,700 be people who actually participated in the slaughter of October 7th, but I don't know. We don't have final details on that. We also do not know the final names of the 250 prisoners that Israel will release, whether they include are some of the worst murderers, or whether the kind of worst of the worst are going to stay in Israeli prisons, but the next level down will be of murderers will be released. At that point, once all of that happens, Israel has guaranteed, or the United States has guaranteed, that it will not allow Israel to reoccupy territory within Gaza, to re-engage in the war, as long as negotiations continue and as long as Hamas is abiding by the agreement, whatever that agreement is. At that point, negotiations will commence on phase two. Phase two is the phase that it will involve disarming Hamas, supposedly, and the bringing in of an international peacekeeping force, the establishment of a governing body to govern Gaza, and then I'm sure there are phase 3 and 4 that involve the long-term, kind of the long-term outcome, outcome for Gaza and how it will be ruled and governed over the long run. So that is the story. Israelis are ecstatic. They are super happy about this. Primarily because, certainly for the last year, the number one priority of the Israeli public certainly has been the release of the hostages, and those hostages will be coming home, particularly the 20 live hostages. I know that my sister's son's best friend has been a hostage since October 7th. He was at the music festival. Indeed, my nephew was supposed to be at the music festival, and at the last minute didn't go. They will be released, and Israelis, my family included, are super excited about that fact. Gazans out in the streets, they're celebrating because the bombing is going to stop. Many of them will be able to go back to their homes if the buildings in which their homes still exist. And they anticipate a rebuilding and a period of relative peace. Some Gazans are pretty afraid because they're worried, and I've seen a number of reports on this, where the Gazans are worried that the Hamas are going to use this period between now and phase 2, or whatever the phase 2 is going to be, between now and when they supposedly are disarmed. Basically, Hamas is going to clean house, kill its enemies, kill anybody who stood up to them, anybody who they can blame or argue that helped the Israelis are going to be killed. So a lot of Gazans are afraid of what comes next. I don't think the Gazans really believe Hamas is going away. But it's also true that many Gazans were celebrating in the streets of Gaza as a Hamas victory. That is, we're celebrating the 2 years to October 7th, celebrating and saying, Israel, we haven't finished with you, in a sense. This war has not, as far as we can tell, fundamentally changed the nature of, or the orientation of the Palestinian people, particularly in Gaza, but even more so maybe in the West Bank. The Palestinian Authority is claiming that it is engaged in a process of reforming based on Trump's plan so that they can, as a reformed entity, whatever the hell that means, be able to gain control over Gaza at some point down in the future as the Trump plan envisions. So here's the thing. There is no question that this is not an ideal plan. The ideal plan would have been for Israel to occupy all of Gaza and destroy Hamas and directly be responsible for the disarming of Hamas, the destruction of the tunnels, the destruction of the infrastructure, and directly responsible for security of Gaza moving forward. But the reality is that that would have probably meant the death of the hostages, and it probably and there's no indication that Israelis were willing to actually do that, to actually defeat Hamas, and actually do what was necessary. I mean, they've had the opportunity to do that for 2 years now, and they've chosen not to repeatedly actually occupy Gaza and defeat Hamas and do whatever is necessary. The Israeli public is not willing to do that. The Israeli military has certainly in the last few months has resisted doing it. There's no political or cultural will to engage in that kind of war. Given that, this is not this is not a good outcome, but it's not a horrific outcome either. The reality is that Israel has bought probably decades of peace. The last 2 years, Israel has reshaped the Middle East. I've talked about this over and over again. It faces a dramatically weakened enemy in the north with Hezbollah. And Hezbollah has been eviscerated, its entire leadership destroyed, its infrastructure crippled, its positions in the south of Lebanon threatening Israel directly don't exist, or being weakened dramatically, and it hasn't launched a missile into Israel in a long, long time. And indeed, the Lebanese army at least is flexing muscles, haven't done anything yet, pretending that it will disarm Hezbollah and positioning itself as the opponent of Hezbollah, which is a positive move for Israel. Syria has changed hands, and at least it appears that the new regime in Syria does not want trouble with Israel, wants to leave Israel alone, and has indeed thrown out the Iranians, thrown out Hezbollah, and eliminated many of Israel's enemies that were positioning themselves in Syria for potential action against Israel. That border will probably be peaceful for the next decade plus. The Shiite militias in Iran have been quieted. They've done nothing. They have been completely subdued, giving an opportunity, hopefully, for the Iraqis to, assert control over them and maybe move forward in a healthier direction in Iraq, shrugging off kind of the violence and the, I think they're going to stay tribal. I don't want to be overly optimistic. But at least they do not pose a threat to the Israelis. Iran, of course, after a 12-day devastating war, has been crippled, weakened. It has almost no agents outside of Iran itself. And the Iran ballistic missile program has been weakened dramatically. And it's hard to imagine that anytime soon they can resurrect their nuclear program. They are now also under global sanctions, UN sanctions, the most severe sanctions, the sanctions that were in place before the Obama nuclear deal. It's not just America, it's the Europeans that are also involved in this. Iran is struggling, is suffering significantly, and we'll get to some good news coming out of Iran in a minute. The Houthis are weak. They're still there. They're still a pest, but they've been weakened significantly. And of course, their supply lines from Iran have been weakened, and the Iranians can't afford quite to bankroll the Houthis like they used to do. And of course, Hamas. Hamas is a shell of itself, even if Hamas survives. And it probably will survive underground. It'll take it decades, years, probably a couple of decades to rebuild. And it's not clear if it'll ever be able to rebuild. It is now under much greater scrutiny, primarily by Israel and Israeli intelligence. It is unlikely that Israel will go back to an era in which it lets Hamas do whatever it wants in the Gaza Strip. Much more likely, Israel will take the stance that it has, like it has in Lebanon, where it might stay behind its own borders, but any attempt to build a tunnel, any attempt to gain new weapons involves an airstrike from the Israelis and a mitigation of that effort. Israel has the technological military superiority is such that it can suppress Hamas indefinitely, as long as it stays committed to doing so. And it seems like it probably will be. The memory of October 7th will last for a very long time. Now, if Hamas is actually disbanded, I don't think that'll actually happen. They'll stay in the background. They'll continue to foment dissent. But if there is an international peacekeeping force, if the tunnels and infrastructure are indeed destroyed, if there is a rebuilding effort that brings in foreign money and foreign interests that have an interest in not seeing that money wasted and that money, sunk into tunnels, there's a real chance that something better is built in Gaza. And then in spite of the fact that Hamas will still be around and probably engage in terrorist attacks in the future, it will never, ever, ever regain the kind of military strength that it has on October 7th. Just like Hezbollah will probably never return to the days of Nasrallah. Iran will probably never regain the military strength it had, not that it was that great, but that it had before this war started. All of that is good news. All of that is worth celebrating. So yes, I would have liked to see Hamas completely crushed. I would have liked to see the Palestinian people, on their knees, begging for peace. I would have liked to see the Palestinians understand unequivocally that they had been defeated and that they were surrendering. All of that would be great. And there would have been a chance for lasting peace. I think what we have today is maybe not so much a chance for lasting peace, but certainly a chance for Israel to gain a peaceful existence for a few decades. And that's a lot. That is a lot. And that is quite an achievement. Israel's whole demeanor and Israel's whole positioning and I'd say way in which it fought the war changed completely after the Beepers. The Beeper attack on Hezbollah really reoriented Israel, became much more aggressive, much more forward-thinking, much more, taking the initiative, not being on the defensive, not waiting for the others to strike, but striking, taking out Nasrallah immediately afterwards. I mean, that set off a chain reaction that has brought us to where we are today. And of course, I think at the end of the day, Trump will take credit for this, and Trump put a lot of pressure on Arab countries to accept this deal, and good for him for doing that. He also put pressure on Israel not to engage more aggressively militarily. Bad for him on that. But the real credit for this deal, for whatever good has come from this deal, is the fact that Israel did two things over the last few weeks. One, it actually did enter Gaza City. It surrounded it. It entered it. It was slowly taking Gaza City. It had evacuated most of the civilian population, and it was going in. And Hamas was being strangled. Hamas had nowhere to go. It had very little areas that it controlled. Those areas were being squeezed. And it could see that within a few weeks, it risked being thoroughly defeated. And even though it kept threatening the hostages, the IDF kept advancing, kept moving forward. So the military pressure was crucial to whatever's been achieved right now. Second, and I think crucially, was the bombing of Qatar, the bombing of the Hamas gathering in Qatar. Even though the mission failed in that it didn't actually kill the Hamas leadership, which is sad and unfortunate that it did not succeed in doing that, this was a real wake-up call for the Qataris. And I think a wake-up call for the entire leadership of the Middle East, the Saudis, the UAE. Even though they all condemned this, they were scared. Suddenly, before they could see Israel's capabilities vis-a-vis Iran, they could see Israel just crushing the Iranians. Iranians, who were supposedly the strongest military force in the Middle East, were being just eviscerated by Israel. And they had no answer. Iran had no answer. So that kind of put them on their back leg. But they always felt protected by the fact that Israel would never attack them. They, among other things, they are allies of the United States. They have a big military base of the United States in Qatar. Israel would never attack Qatar. And then it did. And that was the game changer. That was the game changer. I think the Qataris came to the conclusion that it just wasn't worth it. They didn't want to see what happened to Iran happen to them. They had no intention of having all their investment, their beautiful infrastructure, their buildings, their economy, everything else. They had no intention of putting that at risk when it was clear the Israeli Air Force could access them easily and effectively and at any time. And the reality is, in spite of their attempt to deny it, that the Trump administration almost certainly knew about the attack in advance and let it happen, which sent another message to Qataris. Even though Trump condemned it afterwards, America was willing to let the Israelis kind of manhandle the Middle East. And that scared them. And that's the point in which Trump could use leverage against them. He gave them a security guarantee, which I think is nuts, but there you go. He gave them a security guarantee. But the condition for that security guarantee was pressure on Hamas and also supposedly changes in Al Jazeera. Rumors have it. I don't have confirmation and haven't seen anything in the reporting to suggest this is true, but rumors have it that there's major shakeup going on in Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera is going to be moderated. There's also major investigations into Qatari money in the United States that are being initiated by Congress. I think the whole Qatari operation of influence in the United States is going to be put on a lower flame. It's going to be reduced. It's just gotten too much press, too much notoriety. Congress is paying attention, and I think they've got the security guarantee with the U.S. I think they're going to go into a little bit more quiet mode. I mean, they are the number one spender in the United States for influence in terms of education, in terms of our universities, and in terms of political lobbying. So I think that the security guarantee came with the commitment to reducing the influence of Al Jazeera, reducing the radicalness of Al Jazeera, and also putting pressure on Hamas. And it turns out, and then of course, Erdogan came to the White House. What was it, last week or the week before last? And Trump loves Erdogan. He liked him in the first administration. He likes him. I mean, Erdogan is a what do you call it? An authoritarian thug, exactly the kind of person that Trump likes. And I mean, Trump was joking with him about the fact that Erdogan knows how to really steal an election, and he wasn't kidding. But Erdogan came to the White House wanting F-35s. Erdogan wants F-35s. He realizes that he made a bet a few years ago on Russian technology. He actually bought S-400 air defense systems from Russia. And as a consequence, the United States prohibited him from getting F-35s. He's just seen what Israel did to Syria and to Iran. He's just seen what the Ukrainians did to Russia. Nobody in the world today is exactly excited about Russian weapon systems. Another one realizes he made a big mistake, and what he really needs, if he wants to build a legit military force in Turkey, what he needs is American weapon systems. And what he needs in particular, F-35s, to be able to match Israel and match some of the other countries like Saudi Arabia and Egypt and other countries in the region in terms of their air forces. And I think Trump said, you want F-35s? Put pressure on Hamas. And then finally, the Egyptians. The Egyptians are struggling economically. Sisi is under a lot of pressure internally. They are also struggling because they're at peace, supposedly at peace with Israel, and yet their population does not like Israel, and there's a lot of pressure on Egypt to intervene on the behalf of the Palestinians. Sisi and the military don't want that. They don't want to be humiliated by the Israelis. They also are using American weapon systems. They can't go to war with Israel without American permission, really. So, Sisi basically wants favors from Donald Trump. And again, Trump told him, you want anything, put pressure on Hamas. And Hamas basically capitulated from its position. Look, this deal could have been achieved months and months ago if Hamas would have accepted it. Israel certainly would have. Israel repeatedly has said, control the Philadelphia corridor and you release the hostages and everything's good. So what changed was that Hamas was willing to do it and eager to do it and willing to do it fast because its allies had all turned their back on them. And it's the allies all pushed them into doing this. So, it's that is kind of the dynamics of what happened. It appears Trump is going to fly to Egypt early next week, I guess, to witness the release of the hostages, also come to Israel. So he'll go visit Sisi. He'll live up to his commitment to support Sisi, which is valuable, given that Sisi has done his part of the deal. He will then go to Israel. Supposedly he wants to see the hostages released, and he will supposedly address the Israeli Knesset, the Israeli Parliament, and next week at some point. So a few things that are worth noting about this. Who's really, really, really unhappy about this deal? The river to the sea crowd. I mean, the pro-Hamas demonstrators all over the world are super depressed. Their number one issues being just taken out from under them. They never wanted peace. They never wanted a ceasefire. They wanted to be able to keep going after Jews in Israel. Hamas has capitulated. Hamas is their heroes. They didn't want to see that. So all these people claiming they wanted a ceasefire and peace are the ones most depressed right now because what they really wanted is Israel to be defeated somehow, and they haven't been. Interestingly, too, the United Nations has now announced that it has enough food on its way to Gaza, in Gaza, for the entire population of the Gaza Strip for the next 3 months. So, what do you call it? Famine is just evaporated, poof, all at once, gone away. There's no hunger. There's no famine in the Gaza Strip. It's interesting. They were showing Gazans handing out baklava, baklava, the sweet, today in celebration of the deal. And, people who are starving under conditions of famine don't have baklava. Greta will have to find a new cause, or, I don't know, or she'll have to find a new cause, somebody else to hate on. Now, the Palestinians are out there cheering for "We will kill Jews, we will kill Jews." That is their big lesson learned from all of this, that they haven't killed enough Jews and they want to start over again. Now, I'll just end with this. It's not clear what happens now, once or not now, but let's say 10 days from now. Let's say the hostages were released. Trump has been to the Middle East. He's gone home. He loses interest a little bit. And now you have to negotiate the dissolution of Hamas. Hamas doesn't want to give up its arms. It doesn't want to go away. It is quite happy controlling the areas of Gaza that it can control. It's quite happy trying to rebuild from there. Israel, America is preventing Israel from re-entering Gaza. So Israel supposedly is not going to re-engage in war. What is the motivation to cut a phase 2 deal? What is the motivation of Hamas to disarm? Will the Qataris and the Egyptians and the Turks continue to put pressure on Hamas? What actually happens once the hostages are released? And we just don't know. We just don't know. And it's not clear if there will be a phase two. It's not clear what Israel will do. It is not clear what Trump will allow Israel to do. What will happen on the ground? It's likely, I think, that nothing will happen. That is, Hamas will not disarm. There will be no international peacekeeping force. There will be no new governance. Israel will then just, on a case-by-case basis, go in, bomb particular locations, destroy particularly Hamas units, and come back, primarily use the Air Force. Aid will flow in, UNRWA will go back in, the UN will go back in. But Israel will treat Gaza like it treats Lebanon. It will keep them kind of in place. It would be much better if the negotiations continued. You actually got a disarming of Hamas, and you actually got a rebuilding and actually got a peacekeeping force in there. But I just don't see, I don't see Hamas's incentive to keep going. Now, I'm surprised at how eager Hamas was to give up the hostages at this point. Maybe there's a lot more pressure going on in the background than I even thought. Just as an aside, tomorrow I think the Norwegians are announcing the Nobel Peace Prize. I think Trump is going to be probably disappointed. I can't imagine the Norwegian giving it to him, but who knows? Stranger things have happened. Trump is going to flip out because he won't get it. The Norwegians think that they're going to get increased tariffs and all kinds of other stuff happening as of tomorrow, but we will see. Who knows? He might get it in the end, or he might get it next year. I certainly think, given the history of Nobel Peace Prizes, he's not any less deserving, if you will, if deserve is the right word, than Kissinger or Obama or Yasser Arafat or any of those other horrible people. All right. I think that's all I have to say as of right now about this deal. I mean, it's short-term, medium-term, very good for Israel. Long-term, hard to tell. It could be bad, could be good, but we're definitely, Israel at the end of this deal is in a dramatically better security position than it was October 6, 2023. Hamas, Iran, and its Iranian backers, are in a horrible position as compared to October 6th. So, there is some justice in the world. And I'll add that there is a chance now that Israel will, that if further negotiations happen and if Hamas is disarmed and there is progress in Gaza, that Israel will establish kind of peaceful relations with the Saudis, maybe the Qataris, maybe others, who knows, but Syrians, and there will be some, at least, again, medium-term peace in the Middle East, at least for now, until we see the next inflection point. All right. I'll remind you guys that you could ask questions in the Super Chat. We have a few questions, but not many, so it's an opportunity. Ask me about anything you want, but including about this. If you'd like me to go in a different direction, if you'd like me to analyze something differently, if you'd like to challenge me, ask me any questions, please use the Super Chat to do that. Those of you who don't want to ask questions, you can support the show by using a sticker. Value for value. You're listening to the show. You get some value out of it. All right, some good news out of Iran, or at least what seems like good news out of Iran. And this is backed up by photographs and video coming out of Iran. And that is that Iranians' authority have announced, not the supreme leader, but certain authorities have announced, in this case, is Mohammad Reza Bahonau, the Secretary General of the Front of Followers of the Line of the Imam and the leader and a member of the Iranian Expediency Discernment Council. You make sense of that. I have no idea. Anyway, some senior official in Iran has now announced that, and this is true, the president of Iran announced this about a week ago, that the current general position of the system, the Iranian system, is that the law mandating the wearing of the hijab is no longer mandatory. And if you notice, this decision is being used to violate regulations and impose fines. That is, if anybody's trying to force women to wear the hijab, you should call it in. The president of Iran, Masoud Pezeshkian, in an interview with NBC News earlier, says people have a right to choose. Wow. That's pretty radical. I mean, even American conservatives don't believe that. He said that in response to a question about the hijab. And indeed, pictures out of Tehran are showing more and more women just walking around uncovered or with very minimal covering of hair. Women in pants and in dress, in blouses and in dress that that are basically just a few weeks ago would have been considered horrific and could have been grounds for arresting these women. So there is a real change, it seems. Now, maybe some of you who have contacts in Iran will correct me, but it really seems like a change. Now, it's not a change in the law, and the Supreme Leader has not ruled on this. So it is very much possible this could be reversed on a dime. But I would say this is another consequence of the 12-day war with Israel. Israel so humiliated this regime, so put them on their knees, so eviscerated their confidence in their military, that the last thing they want right now is an internal conflict about the hijab. And again, this is what happens when the West stands up, when it confronts evil, even if it doesn't go all the way as Israel should have, as Trump should have allowed them to do, even if there was no regime changes in Iran. The very fact that somebody stood up to these bastards, the very fact that they were defeated, the very fact that they were humiliated, has a positive resonance, and has positive outcomes. And I think this hijab is part of that. Now, it's also a consequence of all the protests and the wariness of the regime in fighting its own people, particularly given the humiliating defeat by the Israelis. So another positive, small but positive change in the Middle East. Now, I hope this change gets institutionalized, made permanent by a Supreme Leader ruling, or ideally, Supreme Leader would drop dead. That is the ideal scenario, and not be replaced by another Supreme Leader, and Iran morphs slowly into a more secular Western country with real elections, not fake ones like it's had to date. So here's to hoping. Here's to hoping that this is indeed what happens. All right. Yeah, this is kind of a funny story, I guess. Funny. I don't know if funny is the right word, but maybe it's a funny story. I think I've talked on this channel before about Hasan Piker. I mean, let's be clear. Hasan Piker is one of the worst scumbags in the United States. I mean, this is a man who is a big advocate of socialism. He is an inspiration to Mamdani. He's about the most nihilistic person I've seen speak anywhere. He is advocating for the killing of capitalists in the streets. He has called for bloodshed towards CEOs and capitalists and financiers. He is a hater of Israel, a man who has celebrated October 7th, refused to condemn what happened on October 7th, said he didn't really care if rape and murder happened on that day. He is one of the worst anti-Israeli voices out there in the world that celebrates Islamic terrorism and believes in treating anybody who is pro-Israel as if they were neo-Nazi. He has literally said it doesn't matter if rapes happen on October 7th. It doesn't change the dynamic for me, he said. Israel's committing genocide, famine, the whole story. He is the worst of the worst, the worst of the worst. And he has a massive following. He's like on Twitch or whatever, a massive following. I mean, this guy has huge amounts of people who follow him. He has been, I think, really instrumental in rallying young people around the Palestinian cause. He has interviewed people from what do you call it, the Houthis in Yemen, he's played Houthi propaganda. I mean, this is about as vicious and ugly, and disgusting as human being as you can find. And he's been doing this for years, I guess, getting almost no criticism. Nobody cares, right? In a country, he's got a massive following, massive following. But last week, it turned out that while he live streams, there's a dog in the background. And it turns out that this dog is kept under control in the background, not to interfere with Hasan's live streaming, with an electric collar. Hasan zaps him every time he gets up or he gets too rowdy or he gets to the point where he might interfere. And this was discovered by viewers of Hasan Piker's show. And they flipped out. This guy's cruel to animals. This guy should be reported. He should be deplatformed. People shouldn't listen to him. He's a monster. Not for not caring about rape, not for calling for the murder of people in the streets, not for supporting a terrorist organization, not for his anti-Semitic views. No, none of that. Because he zaps his dog. Now, I mean, it's horrible what he does to his dog, but in the big scheme of things, it really is the least of his sins. This guy is a monster that deserves that nobody watch him ever. Not because he zaps his dogs, because his ideas are evil. And he, for advocating those ideas, for holding those ideas, for being a spokesman to these ideas, is evil. Hasan Piker is an evil human being. And the fact that he treats animals poorly or badly is just par for the course. That is not shouldn't surprise anybody, given his opinions of human beings and what he would like to inflict on them. So I don't know that the dog thing is going to become a big deal, but I hope it does. But isn't it interesting that this is what people care about? This is what gets them excited. I mean, the world is a really shitty place. I mean, people are really horrible. The very existence of Hasan Pikers in the world, who have huge influence, huge followings, is one of the most depressing features of the modern world. By the way, as he was zapping the dog, he was yelling into his microphone how much he hates America. He could leave. I think he's got a Turkish passport. He could go to Turkey. He could go spew his disgusting hate and vitriol and evil somewhere else. That would be good. God, are we going? Oh, yes. We're going from that to, I don't know. What happened? Something. We're not organized here. All right. We need to do this. All right. Let's go and talk a little bit, give you an update on tariffs. We haven't talked about tariffs in a while. Tariffs are one of my favorite topics to talk about, and certainly one of the. All right, there we go. All right, so let's find the tariff story. I mean, a few updates on tariffs. First, I want you to know I know a lot of you have been very concerned about the fact that what do you call it? Cabinets, cabinets and sofa and things like that are not being built in the United States. And I know a lot of you are concerned because this is clearly a national security threat. This is clearly a national security risk. The fact that the United States does not make its own cabinetry. You want to buy a kitchen, usually you're importing the cabinetry and sofas. We don't make sofas. Sofas, China and Italy and places like that make sofas. No sofas, and this is again a dramatic, significant military national security issue. Anyway, don't worry, because Trump is on it. As of next week, the U.S. is imposing 25% tariffs on cabinets and sofas. So while no new cabinets and sofas will be built in the United States, the cabinets and sofas you do buy will now carry a 25% tariff. And insanely, Trump is using a national security provision in order to impose these tariffs. So these tariffs are not being imposed under the IEEPA or whatever, the emergency economic thing, which the Supreme Court might overturn. This is under the national security thing, where supposedly he has the authority to impose these tariffs. So don't worry, be happy. You will be paying much more for cabinets and sofas starting next week. But this is all for your own good. And this will make America safer and America stronger and all the national security stuff. Don't worry about it. I'm sure there's a lot of rare earth materials in these cabinets. So I just want to make sure that you were aware of that. Trump announced, tweeted today, I think it was yesterday, 10/9. Tariffs are only good, he says, if you want your country to be rich, influential, and powerful. If you want your country to be a third world country, you should vote against tariffs, which is fascinating, given a list of all the countries with high tariffs. Basically, if you look at the countries with tariffs that are high, you're talking about countries like Cambodia, Brazil, Tanzania, Côte d'Ivoire, Senegal, Togo, Guinea, Mauritius, Grenada, Ghana, Burundi, Uganda, Liberia, Sierra Leone, Nepal, Bangladesh, the Gambia, India, Cabo Verde, Kenya, Chad, Gabon, Cameroon, Congo, and so on. And in other words, if you look at the actual empirical evidence, you can see that the United States at 15% is now somewhere near Kenya and Chad in terms of the level of tariffs. In other words, there seems to be a direct correlation between how high your tariffs are and how third world you are, how poor you are. So if you want to be rich, influential, and powerful, at least according to that data, low tariffs seems to be their strategy, in spite of what Donald Trump says. But here's the thing. Reality doesn't matter. All that matters is what Trump says. Trump says they're good, and therefore they are good. There is no logic check. There's no thinking. There's nothing going on here. Pure Trump makes stuff up. Tariffs make you strong, when tariffs actually make you weak, poor. Now, I don't know if there's causal relationship there. It's not only causal. It's one of the many causes that make these countries poor. And if you look at America's trading partners, we now have, I don't know, 20.6%, 15%, depending on how you measure it. Hong Kong has 0. Singapore has 0 tariffs, 0. Australia 1%, United Kingdom 1%, Vietnam 1.1, Switzerland 1.3, Belgium 1.3, Germany 1.3, France 1.3, Ireland 1.3, Italy 1.3. United States 2 years ago, or a year ago, 1.5. Japan 1.6. China 2.2. Where would you rather be, with these countries or with Kenya and Gabon and Chad? I guess Trump believes that they're the powerful ones. They're the strong ones. Anyway, that's just for fun. Retail prices, are now, you can actually, now we've got a bunch of data and monthly data on this. Retail prices on a bunch of goods have increased significantly since imposition of tariffs in April. Not just imported goods. Imported goods have gone up a lot, and they were actually, so if you look at price trends, they were all trending down. They were all getting cheaper. And as of April, everything is up, all imported goods. And what's interesting is domestic goods have always also spiked. Not quite as much as imported goods, but almost as much. And the trend for both domestic and imported goods, which was downward trending, they were all getting cheaper in 2024 into 2025. That trend is completely reversed, and everything is getting more expensive. This is out of a Harvard Business School working paper, where they're tracking prices. So, it's every imposition of tariffs, prices go up, domestic and imported. So it's not like if I only buy American, I won't be exposed to the price increases. No, American goods are going up in price as well, because the competition is going up. So why would they keep their prices low? They're facing less competition. Today, actually, this is yesterday. Trump was talking about, the horrible lawsuits that have been filed against the tariffs, and what a disaster it would be if the courts overturned his tariffs. And he would say, I would say many of the things I've done could be eradicated if the tariffs overturned. And then he goes on to say, the people who sued him, these are small businesses who've sued him, saying he doesn't have the constitutional authority to impose the tariffs. He says, these are enemies of the country. They're pursuing that lawsuit. Again, anybody who disagrees with Trump, anybody who challenges Trump, is an enemy of the United States. Now, that is a precursor to going after them, to persecuting them, and persecuting them, which is all fine and good because they're enemies of the United States. They're committing treason. This president is truly unbelievable. And then finally, one of the reasons tariffs are not having a bigger impact, negative impact on our economy, is because Trump keeps carving out whole sections that are not going to be tariffs, because he knows, like everybody, that tariffs cause prices to go up. So when he doesn't want prices to go up, he eliminates the tariffs on certain things. So, for example, Trump is excluding generic drugs from the big pharma tariff plan. This reverses a campaign pledge, and is a consequence of internal discussions within the Trump team about the potential price increases or even drug shortages as a consequence of tariffs on generics. Remember, in generics, Americans actually pay significantly lower prices than other countries. Overall, I've told you this in the past, Americans pay less for drugs than Europeans and Canadians. We pay more, a lot more, for brand name, but 97% of all drugs sold in the United States are generic, and there we pay a lot less. So on average, we pay a lot less. But nobody wants to tell you that. That would actually say things are pretty good. And we can't have that. We need emergencies. We need emergencies to convince you that things are really, really, really bad. Here's an example of something good. Refrigerators. You like refrigerators. Refrigerators are good. Well, it turns out the New York Times actually ran a story called The Incredible Growing Refrigerators. And what it shows is that refrigerators in the United States keep growing. They keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. They also consume more and more and more electricity. Well, no, actually, less and less electricity. So they keep getting bigger, consuming less electricity. So actually, refrigerators today consume 80% less electricity than refrigerators 50 years ago. So in 1990, not that long ago, I remember 1990, capacity, cubic feet capacity of refrigerators was 20.45 cubic feet. In 2006, it was 22, up almost 10%. By 2010, again, 2010 is 20, it really starts accelerating. 2014 goes up to 24. 2021, 25.82. In other words, refrigerator capacity, on average, has gone up from 1990. We weren't poor in 1990. We had big refrigerators in 1990. Went from 20 cubic feet in 1990 to 26 cubic feet in 2021. 31 years. Now, think about the fact that in 1928, when the first consumer refrigerators came out, they had 7 cubic feet of space. 7. I mean, that's the little refrigerator you have beer in your TV room to watch the Super Bowl, right? Your real refrigerator has 26 cubic feet and consumes 80% less electricity than that 1990 refrigerator. Some refrigerators have 30 to 30, have much more than this in terms of cubic feet. And they're massive. They're 70 inches tall and they're 36 inches wide. And so, all those measures of standard of living, quality of life, we're poorer, things suck, everything's bad. It was, everybody wants to live in the 50s and life was great then. You could live, and with your little refrigerator and on one salary and have 5 kids and 3 dogs and a station wagon. Yeah, but nobody's willing to give up that refrigerator. So, by the way, Europeans, I don't know if there are any today on the show right now because it's late in Europe right now, but Europeans have much smaller refrigerators. It's another way in which American, much richer than Europeans, American standard of living, quality of life is much higher. And by the way, these refrigerators are mostly not made in the United States, and certainly parts of them are not made in the United States. These massive refrigerators that consume very little electricity are products of globalization. Remember globalization, that thing you hate? One other piece of good news. I know, it's terrible. You don't like this. There are more and more millionaires in America. I know being a millionaire is not what it used to be, but, there are more and more millionaires. 18% of households, almost 20% of households, as of 2023, which meant 24 million households in the United States, had a net worth of at least $1 million. And given the performance of the stock market in 2024 and 2025, that number has to be, my guess is it's above 20%. 20% of Americans today are millionaires. Yeah. Life doesn't quite suck as much as people would like you to pretend it does. And, sometimes it sounds like I'm telling you it does because, things are so negative and so bad. All right. We're going to switch gears a little bit. I want to talk about China. And this is going to be, I'm going to say some positive things about China and take it for what it is. In this sense, and it's a positive about China and a negative about the U.S. One second. There was a story in the Free Press, in Barry Weiss's Free Press, titled "China Builds, America Blocks." China builds, America blocks. And I've seen a number of videos in the last few days that were really striking. I'm going to show you some of them. But first, I want to remind you that about 18 months ago, the bridge in Baltimore, you remember a ship hit the bridge and the bridge collapsed? Really horrible. I think a few people lost their lives. Really horrible incident. And the bridge collapsed. And it's 18 months. And it's still nowhere near to being built. It's just not even close. It's just, there's a gap. That whole section of highway is being shut. There's just nothing. And I want you to contrast that fact, that idea, that reality, the idea that in 18 months we couldn't build a bridge. We can fix a bridge. To what is going on in China over the last 20 years, and just the kind of building boom that they've experienced. China built its first expressway in 1993. By 2011, they had a bigger interstate highway network than the United States. By 2020, it has built a second batch of expressways that again total the length of the United States system. So they have double what the U.S. has. The first expanse of highways took 18 years to build. The second, 9 years. They built the entire U.S. highway system in 9 years. From 2003 to 2013, Shanghai added as much subway track as the entire system in New York City. Now, they're building an extension in New York City, along 3rd Avenue, something like that, which is taking decades. In Shanghai, 10 years, they built the entire New York system in 10 years. In 2025, 51 Chinese cities had subway lines, 11 of which were longer than New York's. China has a longer high-speed rail network than the rest of the world combined, put together. I'm not even talking about the fact that the United States has no high-speed rail at all, and that the one project that it has, building high-speed rail from nowhere to nowhere in California, is nowhere. The high-speed rail in China is amazing. China has amazing bridges. It has amazing architecture. It has amazing buildings. It's truly stunning. China builds nuclear power plants. The U.S. has just one nuclear power reactor under construction today. China has 31 under construction. The only U.S. nuclear plant built in the 21st century took 15 years to build and $30 billion. In August 2024, China's nuclear authority approved construction of 11 new reactors. All 11 total will cost about $30 billion, what it cost one. China has built massive quantities of housing. Massive quantities of housing. The United States, we can't build houses. We can't build condos. We can't build. I mean, the bridges, the infrastructure. Some of the highest bridges, the tallest bridges, the most beautiful and modern and biggest airports in the world, all in China. I mean, when I was in China, it's been a while since I've been there, by far the most beautiful airports, stunning airports, were Chinese airports. Now, let me show you a couple of videos. These have been circulated, I'm sure, by Chinese bots to show how amazing China is. Look at this. This is, let's see. All right, let's see if I can get this in better position for you guys to see it. All right. This is a, this is the tallest bridge in the world. It cuts a trip that used to take 2 hours down to 2 minutes. It has, as part of this bridge, there's a theme park, there's a glass walkway, there's a restaurant built into the bridge, a high-speed glass elevator, and a waterfall. You'll see the waterfall in a minute. A waterfall dropping off on the edge of the bridge. You can also bungee jump off of this bridge, right? Now, the bridge is above the Huangzhang Grand Canyon. It is 2,050 feet above the river, and it spans 4,600 feet over the river. And just look at this video. I mean, this is. Ignore the music. Look at that. I mean, that's gorgeous. There's a restaurant up there. I mean, there's the waterfall. There's a waterfall coming out of the bridge. They're just dumping water down in there. I mean, that is magnificent. It should be in America. And you saw there's a walking path there. There's the restaurant again, with an elevator that comes up there. There's the walking path. There's the waterfall. I mean, that's ambition. That's civil engineering. This is amazing. And it says something, I mean, there's a lot of problems in China, and I talk about them a lot, and they've got a lot of economic problems and for central planning and social scores and all of that. But there's something about a culture that's that ambitious that can't be all bad. It can't be all bad when you're that ambitious. And this is not the kind of ambition, I think this is not the kind of ambition that built the pyramids. These are not mausoleums. This is not buildings to commemorate the dead and to bury kings in them. These are functional projects that make people's lives better, and that ordinary people, all of us, can enjoy their beauty, their aesthetic quality, their stunning, amazing. Now watch this. This is the largest high-speed train station in China, right? The Chongqing East Railway Station. Just look at this. You're coming down the escalator. Look at that. Where in America? Where? Anywhere. Is there anything like this? Nothing even close. I mean, it's sad. I mean, the closest thing I know to that is Singapore Airport is stunning. Airport in Singapore is stunning. Hong Kong Airport is stunning. But all the rest is in China. And look at the scale of it. I mean, it's beautiful and ambitious and grand scale and beautiful architecture and modern. It's not trying to do the Qin dynasty. It's not like Donald Trump architectural requirements of all federal buildings have to have Greek columns and Roman whatever, facades. This is modern, beautiful, amazing architecture. This is what America should be aspiring to. And it's China. Oh, here's one other one. Hopefully you can see, you'll be able to see this. This is a a project to reclaim the desert. So this is reclaiming the desert, turning it into farmland. Look at that. Those are dunes. That's not AI. Those are real photos. That's the, what do you call it? I forget the name of the desert in borders Mongolia. But yeah, this is what we used to do. Reclaim desert, dry swamps, build, baby. Instead, can't build anything in this country. And when we do build something, it has to be, by architectural standards of 500 BC. The Gobi Desert, that was at the Gobi Desert. Now, granted, a lot of the stuff that's being built in China particularly over the last 15 years, has been drilled with massive amounts of debt that they now cannot pay off. A lot of it is being built while people are unbelievably poor and starving, and yet there are these big, massive civil engineering programs instead of actually liberating the economy and allowing for private entrepreneurs and the capital to flow into private entrepreneurs who would actually build stuff that has sustained economic success over time and would help raise people out of poverty. I mean, there are a lot of problems, and there's a lot of, I'm sure there are bridges that are too beautiful for their own good, that were built in places where nobody's going to use them, like bridges to nowhere type things. But I'm just trying to give you a sense of what we've lost, what the environmentalists and the conservatives and the conservationists, or whatever you want to call them, have destroyed in this country. The ambition, the grandeur. I mean, civil engineering projects are beautiful, amazing things. And they inspire people, and they reflect a nation's ambitions. They reflect a people's ambitions. They reflect where they would like to go and what they would like to do, and the kind of world they would like to live in. And again, we want to live in a world with no new buildings, no new housing, no new bridges, no tunnels. God forbid you build a tunnel. We want to live in a world where if you're going to build a building, it's going to look like ancient Greece or ancient Rome. It's such a poverty of vision is what we have in this country. And it's just pathetic and sad. And this is what I loved about China when I was there. I loved the ambition. I loved the spirit. I loved the skyscrapers, the architecture, the shooting for the stars, and just wanting to succeed, and wanting to succeed big, not settling for small. And that used to be America. And that should be America. And it's, full of flaws when it's Chinese, because it's government run and it's government centered and it's statist and it's all the problems in China. And yet there's a spirit there that I think suggests that there's something in Chinese culture, something in that people is worth watching and hoping that they're somehow liberated. Imagine that country free, liberated. That would be quite amazing. All right. Let's, that is it. That is the news for Thursday, October 9th. We will have another new show tomorrow on Friday, October 10th. All right. There's some quick reminders. First, we haven't met the first hour goal, which is $250. We're at $225, so we're $25 short of the first hour goal. But we really should be on. We're already 15 minutes into the second hour, and we've got a bunch of questions, so we're going to go deep into the second hour. We really should be making it to $500, which is the second hour goal. So please consider supporting the show with a sticker. There are 146 people watching live on YouTube. There's a bunch of people on Twitter as well. please consider coming over and supporting the show. And Fog says he has no money. A couple of bucks, $1.99. You can just stick it for 99 cents just to show that support, just a value for value. Even if it's $1, it's incredibly valuable. Indeed, if everybody did $1 right now, we'd be doing great. So please consider doing that. But also like the show. The algorithm really likes the likes. The algorithm likes the chat. Likes engagement. Algorithm loves engagement. Engage. All right. Thank you, Alan. Thank you for the sticker. Really appreciate that. Let's see who else we had stickers. We had a really good sticker right at the beginning. Stinger Bell, thank you for the $20. That was great. We had Stephen Harper. Thank you, Stephen. Alex did $50 early on, and Catherine got it all started with a sticker. So thank you guys for those stickers. Keep them coming. Let's chip away at this goal, even if it's just a little bit. We got to chip away at it. I'll remind you of our sponsors: Hendershot Wealth, Hendershot with 2 T's. Hendershot Wealth is a sponsor of the show. It has products that can save you a lot of money on capital gains taxes. If you've got capital gains, whether from stock appreciation or from selling a business, check out my interview with Robert. It's on the playlists, in playlist for the one for sponsors. It's Robert Hendershot, my interview with him. I think you'll find it interesting. Any of you interested in finance, economics, I think you'll find this interview really interesting. And if it's applicable to you, check them out, hendershotwealth.com/YBS. The Admin Institute wants to remind you all that the Atlas Shrugged essay contest is the submission deadline is at the end of this month, October 30th. $25,000 first prize. So if you haven't thought about submitting an essay, you should. If you want to see who qualifies, you know what you need to write an essay on, if you want to know all the details, check them out at AynRand.org/start here. AynRand.org/start here. Check out the Atlas Shrugged essay contest. And finally, Alex Epstein is the world leading authority on all things climate and fossil fuel and energy and electricity. He's really busy these days because there's so much going on with Trump deregulation, but also with a massive shortage in electricity and in electricity production capabilities in the United States, given the increased demand for electricity by data centers. Check him out, alexepstein.substack.com, where you can learn about all of this stuff and get talking points about the key issues that face this country when it comes to energy. All right. Thank you, Justin. Thank you for the sticker. Appreciate it. And finally, I want to encourage you all to think about becoming monthly donors, monthly supporters of the show. You can do that on patreon.com. Just go to patreon.com, fill in the form. It's pretty easy to do. And you can just get it set up a monthly thing where you become a supporter on a monthly basis. Don't have to think about it again. It's an easy way to do it. If you do it at $10 or more, you get the podcast of the show with no ads, no advertising. People have been asking for that for years now. Well, now it's available. Take advantage of it. Sign up on Patreon, $10 or more, and you get it for free. All right. A reminder to do super chats. Let's start with Harper Campbell. Can AI still make us rich and prosperous despite the rise of authoritarianism throughout the West? For narcissistic reasons, is the Trump administration protecting AI, allowing it to grow largely unobstructed? Yeah, it certainly can create wealth in spite of authoritarianism. I mean, look at China. China's become, much wealthier in spite of the authoritarianism. It depends how the authoritarianism is applied, where they keep their hands off, what they allow and what they don't allow. You can't become as rich as you would otherwise. But you still can become quite rich. I think Trump administration is protecting AI, partially because a lot of its supporters are the tech guys, And the tech people have encouraged them to keep their hands off of AI, and to leave the industry alone. And I think that has worked so far. It's also the case that Trump has found different ways for his family to make money off of crypto and AI and all kinds of initiatives like that. And I think they would, the hands off is part of making that possible. But yeah, I think it's purely pragmatic. There's no principle behind it. Clark, when I studied the Holocaust in school, I remember thinking, how did Hitler get tens of millions of Germans to follow him with hardly any opposition? Then I realized I'm watching my fellow Americans take the same path. Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. I think you're watching the kind of tribalism, the kind of personality worship, the kind of mindlessness that we saw in Germany in the 1930s. I don't think it's quite as extreme. I don't think we're heading in that direction. But certainly it's in the same direction. You're also seeing it on the left. Think about how many people are going out to the pro-Hamas demonstrations and mindlessly just following what their professors told them. It's the same phenomena on the left, and you're seeing it on left and right. You're seeing a mindlessness and a tribalism that is shocking and un-American and, really disappointing. But it helps you understand what happened back then, because it's the same phenomenon. Clark says, to be fair, I think the Holocaust education in Germany is very good. Germans understand what happened and how it happened, and are always on the lookout for what they call the early signs, of anti-Semitism and so on. Yeah, it's why they're so upset by the rise of the right wing. But yes, I think the Germans have taken the Holocaust to heart. Whether they fully understand the causes, I don't think they do. I don't think anybody does. You'd have to read the ominous parallels. You'd have to read Leonard Peikoff to truly understand what happened in Germany and understand the real causes of it. And I don't think anybody has that. If they would, the philosophy of the world would be dramatically different, because the fact is that philosophically, if you read Ominous Parallels, you discover philosophically we don't hold the dramatically different philosophy than the people held in the 30s in Germany. This is why it can happen again, because the philosophy is not that different. The Oceanist. Hi, Yaron. I've been a look on the channel for a while. I remember you said you were a socialist at some point until you read Atlas Shrugged. What part in the book changed your mind? Oh, I don't know. It was the book. It was the totality of it. It was everything about it. But I mean, what really got to me was the idea of egoism. What really got to me was the idea of self-interest. That is what really shattered my beliefs in altruism and in socialism. Remember, I was 16, so, but it was the whole book. I don't think there's any particular passage. It just kept building and building and building, and it just became clear that this is true, and what I believed in and what I was holding and what the culture believed in and what was prevalent in the culture was just wrong, and it just didn't make any sense. And her critique was spot on. But it was the positive point. The positive points about life, about self-interest, that really got to me. It really got to me. Andrew, can the objectivist virtue of pride be adapted to an altruistic framework? Don't altruists also stress moral ambition, albeit towards entirely different aims than we do? Or does moral ambition infer selfishness? Well, moral ambition implies a morality that is attuned to reality, a morality that is achievable. There's no point in having moral ambition if you know in advance, and the morality is set up to fail. The morality is set up to make it impossible for you to be perfect, to be ambitious. You can try, you can push, but you can't succeed. The whole point of altruism is failure. I mean, the ultimate altruism would require death, and that's not what they preach, right? So the pride is only possible if moral ambitiousness leads to moral success. And that success leads to positive things in the world for you, to reinforce the practicality of the morality. So an impractical morality is incompatible with pride. It's incompatible with moral ambitiousness because you're failing constantly. Wes just came in with $50 sticker. Thank you, Wes. Really, really appreciate that. Esoteric Economy, thank you for your sticker. I think that catches me up. Thanks again, Wes. It's good to see you here. That has really helped make a dent in our target, in achieving our target. All right, Andrew. All the conservatives and hippies are of unspoiled nature. I'll take that high-speed rail station. Me too. Don't you think it says something about our sense of life being anti-building? Rand once described New York City as like a garden. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a sense of life of smallness, of meekness, of I don't belong in this world. I just need to fit in with nature. I don't want to command nature. I just want to fit in. I don't want to spoil it. I don't want to touch it. That is such a meekness, smallness of stature, smallness of mind, a small mentality, an unambitious sense of life, a sense of life, I think, much more focused on fear of nature, fear of reality, fear of the world, than on conquest of nature, which is what, people starting from the age of discovery on into the 20th century, I think, felt, the people who really built the world. All right, not your average algorithm. How is a Secret Service agent taking a round for the president not an altruistic job? Well, it's not an altruistic job because you recognize, first of all, you have to enjoy the profession itself, the what's involved in it, the physicality of it, the intelligence of it, the challenge of it. But then you realize that your job is necessary to the preservation of liberty. It's no different than being a soldier. It's no different than fighting for freedom. Part of that is protecting the person that is in charge and preserving that freedom. And so helping protect him, doing whatever's necessary to protect him, because by protecting him, you're protecting your own life, you're protecting your own family, you're protecting your values, you're protecting freedom, which is a value. So it's not altruistic if you understand the abstract values that you're fighting for. Liam says, has Kant defeated the Enlightenment in the United States? Well, I don't know if he's defeated it, but it's certainly on the ropes. And but the battle continues. I don't think it's over. I mean, look at the progress in AI. Look at the excitement about technology. That's still the Enlightenment. But it's getting desperate. It's getting desperate. Clark, once the intelligentsia make enough people mindless, they'll huddle together and follow anyone with a strong enough personality. Attila and the witch doctor knew what they were doing. Yep. Yeah, and we're getting there. I mean, I think a significant number of our population now is mindless and followers and unthinking. And this is the challenge we face. This is the challenge. How do you snap them out of it? How do you snap them out of it? Doshianis, Yaron, I think you should have to try to go on Stitch and Adam's show and talk about tariffs. One of the hosts, Adam, seemed somewhat supportive of them. Look, I think the best way to get me on shows like that is for you guys to ask the hosts to invite me. Me approaching them usually does not work, but when their audience members talk to them about it, that's when they respond. So I encourage you to write to them or post or super chat or whatever it is that they do, and encourage them to invite me on the show. Andrew, idea for a spin-off for the rules of life, a critique of Christian virtues in practice, how not to live, rules for the lifeless. Maybe too negative, but I picture you contrasting it with the positive. Yeah, I mean, I've done shows like that. I've done the 7 Deadly Sins. I've done a couple, 2 or 3 shows about Christian virtues and Christian vices and what they stand for. But I'll look at what I've done and what more I could do. Neo, is China's development mostly state-led, and does that prove that government can manage economies well? Socialists often cite China as a model. I mean, a lot of the civil engineering projects are state-led, often local governments, not the federal government. But they haven't done it well. I mean, again, they're ambitious. The architecture's amazing. They've spent money. They don't have all the regulations and all the environmental controls, so they can get these things done quickly. But it's also true that, as I said earlier, it's not clear they can pay for it. They're deeply in debt. Their economy is struggling. People in China are poor, or at least there's a significant number of them that are still poor. This doesn't help them. So there are real problems in a government-managed economy that manifest themselves in China. And, of course, the socialists are wrong, because China, in that sense, is a failure. It's not a success. It has certain successes, most of them when they leave the private sector alone. In the case of these civil engineering projects, it's often private sector projects that are funded by the government, but they're left alone to build. But their progress in tech and elsewhere is a private sector success. It's where the government is backed off. The Oceanist, Yaron, if Israel didn't have conscription, would you have joined the IDF? Why or why not? Well, at the time, I probably would have, because I was still not completely free of all the collectivism and everything else. Would I today? I mean, possibly. Certainly, if I was planning to make a life in Israel, I would. If I was planning to spend a significant time there, I really believe that if you're going to live in a country, you should contribute to its defense if it's being threatened, if war is a real option. If people want to try to kill me while I live in Israel, I should contribute to defending myself, defending my values, defending my ability to live there. Now, if I was committed to leaving quickly, then probably not. But if I was going to stay there, if I had family there, or if I was going to stay a period, doesn't have to be the rest of your life, but a period, then yes, I think I would serve in the military, because it's an issue of protecting myself, protecting my values, protecting my ability to live while I'm there, and protecting my family and the things that I care about. Stringer Bell. Hello, Yaron. Any thoughts on the secret handshake statute? What? I don't know the secret handshake statute. How much impact does satirical art have on the culture? Well, so I don't know the sculpture, but satire in a modern life has a lot of, I think, a lot of impact. Most of it negative, because most satire is kind of cynical and undermining and undercutting of values. And I think almost all of a lot of our art today is skeptical and cynical, and in that sense detrimental to real value pursuit. But you'll have to send me a photo of what you're talking about so I can evaluate. Enric, what's your take on private equity debt placed on Joann Fabric and put them into bankruptcy? It was quite successful beforehand with loyal customers. Joann Fabric. I don't know the particulars of the case, but look, sometimes companies take on too much debt that drives them into financial distress. Sometimes a company is successful and then something changes in the marketplace that makes them unsuccessful, and the fact that they have a lot of debt accelerates their decline. I don't know enough about this particular case to say what actually happened. But look, markets are not infallible. Private equity is not infallible. Again, markets are not infallible. So the fact that maybe they took on too much debt, maybe they did something bad, maybe they restructured the company in a way that was not wealth creating, all of that is possible. Mistakes happen all the time. It's not in the nature of private equity. How to stay positive when radical Islam is seemingly conquering the West with pro-Palestinian rallies every weekend and support for terrorism going unchecked by weak governments? Well, I mean, the reality is the Islamists are still weak. The Islamists do not control any significant place. Where they do control, like in the Middle East, they're getting weaker, not stronger. The fact is that Israel has crushed the Iranians and crushed Hezbollah and crushed Hamas. And that has to have an impact on the energy that the Islamists in Europe have, because as they're seeing their causes all being crushed by a small Western country, their confidence in their own cause must dwindle. And the reality is that many of the countries in the Middle East that used to be more oriented towards Islamism, like Saudi Arabia and the UAE, and maybe we'll see a transition in Qatar, are moving away from Islamism and banning the Muslim brotherhoods and taking money away from them. So it's not all good news for them. It's actually a lot of bad news. And the real worry is how weak our Western governments are. But remember, Islamism is unbelievably weak. Look at what Israel did to them, which means any Western country can eviscerate them in no time. They're really an insignificant threat in the big picture of things. They're a nuisance. They will cause damage, but they're not going to win. They can't win. They're way too weak, way too primitive, way too barbaric. They're just not in a position where they're going to win. Cults. On a related note, I finished Ominous Parallels. I've noticed a lot of similar themes between now and you predicted some of this years ago. Yep. I mean, Ominous Parallels is a brilliant book. Everybody should read it. Of course, the next book to read is The Dim Hypothesis, but he shows philosophically exactly what happened that caused the collapse in Germany and how the trends going back to the 1970s were already happening in the United States and what inevitably that'll lead to and what inevitably that has already led to. Thanks, Colt. Michael, The Ominous Parallels is basically a history book written before the historical events actually unfold. Well, it's half that and half the history book, right? Half explanatory about something that did indeed happen in history. All right, guys. Thank you for all the support. I really, really appreciate it. I will be back tomorrow. You know, my voice still has not completely returned. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll do news probably around 3 p.m. tomorrow. I'm not traveling, so there'll be shows tomorrow and through the weekend. And yeah, have a great rest of your Thursday, and I will see you all tomorrow. Bye, everybody.